080-998-6996. Are you going to vote? When will you vote? Where will you vote? All right. We don't want you to tell us who you vote for. That we will know at the end of the day. But for now, we want to know how ready you are in terms of voting, whether you have your voter ID card, and whether you are eager to cast your ballot. We've deployed a big team across the country, so we have reporters and volunteers in 276 constituencies who will be bringing us reports and results. I'm going to take you back on air. So our Ashanti regional correspondent Hafiz Tijani is already on the line. I'm not sure if he's left at all. Hafiz, Yadi.
Lafia, hello, boss.
What's the response? Senukade.
You say Lafia, hello too.
Lafia, hello. How are you doing? How is Kumasi getting ready for the election this morning?
Well, so even the cock crowed, people were queuing at most of the constituencies and the centers, and I am just impressed about the early arrival of the materials at most of the centers we have visited. So here at the Aswansi constituency, most of the centers had their materials ready, and the party agents as well as the electoral officials, they are sorting out the materials, trying to cross-check every detail of the materials. And this is what you find when you go to other areas within the Aswansi constituency. So Kumasi or the Ashanti region, the constituencies are all ready for the elections today.
So you will be embedded in Aswansi, but I'm sure your team has been looking around other places. Just tell me what the general feeling is this morning. In Accra, we have people queuing as early as 4 a.m. in some parts of the constituencies close to us. Is that the same case in your areas beyond Aswansi?
Yes, the same. It's the same, but you don't find the general picture. Say some areas, people, you just find some people coming in, few people going to the centers as early as that time. But at some of the areas, you find people going there before even 4 a.m. We have had reports of some people who were at some of the centers at 3:30 a.m. and 3 a.m. So people want to come and vote early and go back to their usual daily activities. Others also, as usual, want to wait for in the afternoon or midday so they can come and vote. Others also want to vote in the evening. So for those who want to vote early, especially with the elderly, you see them mostly coming out, the elderly coming out to sit in the queues, knowing their conditions. So most of them are here at some of the centers.
We heard the story about whether KJTR should open on voting day or not. You know, it's a big market center. Yesterday was a holiday. What's the indication? Will markets be open in Kumasi, or what's the sense of economic and commercial activity on voting day today?
Well, people are going about their normal duties. There were a series of meetings between the market queens, the trader groups, the leadership of the trader groups, as well as the Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly. So this was a proposal from one of the leaders of the trader groups who says that people have different constituencies, come from different constituencies to the market. So this was a proposal that they should close the market and people will have time to go and vote. And some of the traders or trader groups also opposed this. So the KMA later said that it didn't give any approval or any proposal. So this proposal was just coming from the trader groups, the leadership of the trader groups, who were saying that since their members are not in different constituencies, they should close the market so they can come and go and do their voting. But later, if they feel like coming to the market, they can come. But the issue was that people are coming from outside of Kumasi.
All right, so, Hafiz, hold on. I have an EC official on the line. I'll come back to you. We have Fred Tetteh, who's the Deputy Director in charge of research at the Electoral Commission. Just want to get a sense of the big numbers for the election. Mr. Tetteh, good morning. Ahead of a big day for all of us.
Good morning, Bernard. Good morning, and good morning to our listeners.
Yes, wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
For such a big operation, I'm sure you guys start working before today. So can you tell me what has been put in place already before now, in terms of whether ballots have been sent, things have been deployed, or is it this morning that things are sent out? Just give us a sense of how you prepare for a day like this as EC.
Yes, thank you very much, Bernard. Usually when it comes to election preparation, as you know, we started the preparation somewhere from May. And as we've been saying, elections is a process, it's not an event. Today you see the event, but it's still a process. We'll finish with the registration. Talking about today, we have the materials, all the 40,600 plus polling stations have their materials in place. And what happens is that in the evening, things started moving at dawn. So from 6 yesterday midnight, we move voting screens. We make sure that the polling stations are recorded by the presiding officers. And as I said, dawn, we start moving the polling materials to polling stations. So dawn, we're talking about places that are far from the district offices, are places that are closer, meaning polling stations that are closer. You see the materials coming in between 5, 6, 6:30. Presiding officers and their materials should be at polling stations.
So definitely before 7 a.m., every polling station should have their materials, because in the regions, the materials are coming from the regional capitals. Everything is not coming from Accra yesterday, right?
No, not at all. Not at all. Even materials are not coming from the, let me say, regional capitals. 3 days ahead or 4 days ahead, 5 days ahead, we move them from the regional capitals, the regional security armory, police armory, to the district offices. And at the district offices, they will determine whether the distribution of the materials into the various ballot boxes meant for polling stations are done at the district offices of the Electoral Commission, provided they have adequate space. Otherwise, in many cases, they do it at the district police command if they have enough space. That's where all the political parties intend to be there. Those who received the statistics, the figures of the ballot papers printed that were sent to them ahead of the printing, they have all those data with them. They will check, go through, and then slot the ballot papers and other materials, including the seals, the inks, the validating stamp, the registers, the DVD, and any other thing that will be needed, including the pin sheets in the boxes, prior to be moved this morning to the polling station.
Wonderful. Since you're head of research, let's do some numbers. 18.7 million voters. I think it's 40,600 polling stations. What are the key?
40,648.
40,648. So from our calculation, you have less than 500 people per polling center if we do the division, right? So no polling station will have more than 500 voters, correct?
Well, the maximum number of voters that you found at a particular polling station could be 700, and from my figures, what I saw is 757. And that's just one polling station in the whole Ghana. So when we talk of the average, you're looking at 370, 385. And we have close to about 60 to 70% of our polling stations within that range, on the average range of 370, 385, 390. The minimum number of voters that you found at a polling station, I can't offhand remember that particular polling station, but the total is 20. The minimum.
The minimum is what?
The list.
The minimum is what?
22 voters.
22. Wow. So your maximum polling station is 700, and that's just one, and your minimum is 22.
Exactly.
Wow. In terms of the process flow, you have an average of 380 voters per polling station, and you're voting
Exactly.
from 7 a.m. Based on the way you've calculated it, will the time be enough for every polling station to finish before 5 o'clock, based on the way you calculate this?
Right. You have 10 hours of voting from 7 to 5. That gives you about, if my calculation is right, that's about 600 minutes. Okay? So, on the average, each person could go through, spend about between 2 to 3 minutes in the polling station. And the key thing that usually we think of maybe delaying or slowing down the queue from way back in 2012, what we saw with the BVDs. But these BVDs that we've deployed are very, very fast, quick, and smart. And it takes from my monitoring on the 2nd of December, the time, in other words, the turnaround time for a person to be verified was between 2 seconds to 5 seconds maximum.
Wow. You are giving us some interesting numbers. So you are saying 10 hours of voting, which is about 600 minutes. Average voter, 2 to 3 minutes. So definitely, if it's even 400 voters, they should be able to finish. The BVD should take us between 2 to 5 seconds to verify. That used to be the bottleneck. Can you walk us through the process of voting for people who are listening? So I appear at a polling center, I join a queue. What must I have? What must I do? If you can just walk us through that briefly, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. When you show up at a voting station or a polling station, the key thing that you must know, and I must say that before I start the flow, be sure that where you're going is your polling station. If you are not sure, but you know you have your voter's ID, just dial *711*51# and you will receive a response. This short code could be used on all networks. So when you dial *711*51#, your phone will ask you, your response is to enter your 10-digit voter's ID. If you do that, you see your full name, and then your polling station name will appear on your phone, so that it shows you where exactly you are registered, so that you can go and then vote. One, if a voter appears or showed up at a polling station, the first point of call, we have 5 officials. We have presiding officer, a name reference list officer, verification officer, ballot paper issue 1, which happens to be the presidential ballot, and then the second ballot paper issuer, that is the parliamentary ballot. So you show up, first point of call is the name reference list officer. The name reference list officer is using what we call the name reference list, which is more of like a book reference. In the name reference book, the officer you mentioning your name will identify your name in the name reference list and then communicate where your name can be found in the main register, the page and then the column to the verification officer. So let's say Bernard, you come in. I must say that if you have your voter's ID card, it facilitates the process quickly. However, if a voter on this day cannot find his or a voter's ID card, you don't need to worry. Just walk into the polling station, provided you are sure that is your polling station. So whether you have the card, you don't have the card, all that is needed is your fingerprint and your face. Just show up your face and your fingers, and that's enough. So the voter, Bernard Avle, approaches the name reference list officer. His name is found in the name reference list. He will be directed to walk to the verification officer. The verification officer, looking at Bernard Avle, has opened the page where Bernard's name can be found. We'll make sure he establishes resemblance. In other words, it is Bernard standing in front of me, and it is Bernard that I can find in the voters register, the picture. The verification officer, satisfied with himself, will take the DVD, will scan the QR code. Please, we don't scan the picture in the register. We scan the QR code in the register. The moment the QR code of Bernard Avle is scanned, Bernard Avle's picture will pop up on the BVD. The BVD is just like a normal Android phone with some special features. So Bernard's picture pops up. Then Bernard will be required to put one of his fingers on the BVD for verification. If indeed the liveliness in Bernard Avle's body, in other words, blood is flowing through him, is alive, the verification machine matching the fingers of Bernard Avle together with the biometric features that were captured during the registration, the BVD will sound verified and blinking green light instantly. So the verified sound, the audio sound of verified, will be heard by the officials and the party agents sitting around. Bernard is cleared to go for presidential ballot. The verification officer verifying you successfully has to block the QR code and tick against Bernard that he has turned up. Bernard walks to the presidential ballot paper issuer. Your little finger will be dipped in the, the indelible ink. We are using the indelible ink, I must emphasize. We are using the indelible ink. Every voter will put his or her hand in the indelible ink. Before the presidential ballot paper will be issued to you, Bernard, the ballot paper issuer must make sure, and Bernard, you also have to make sure that your ballot paper is validated at the top right or left corner at the back of the ballot paper before it's issued to you. When it's being issued to you, the officer has to direct you how to fold it, not how to vote or who to vote for. Then the ballot paper is issued to you. But I must also add that because you dip your hand in the indelible ink, make sure the tissue provided in front of the officer, you use it to clean your indelible ink well before you touch the ballot paper as the person is issuing to you, so that you don't stain the ballot. You take your ballot, you walk to the polling booth, the presidential polling booth. You dip your hand, your finger, or your thumb in the the ink pad provided in the screen. You mark your choice. You clean your hands again. After marking your choice, don't fold it immediately, else you will stain the ballot with the ink and it will be rejected. So after marking your choice, please, there are tissues in the voting screen. Clean your hand very well. Take your time, clean it. Don't let people heckle you. So do that. Take the ballot paper, fold it nicely, vertical first, and then you again fold it again. You come out of the voting screen, drop it in the presidential ballot box, walk to the parliamentary ballot paper issuer. He or she will again validate your ballot paper at the top right or left corner. We train them that they shouldn't validate in the middle, because the ink, if it's so wet, will appear against a candidate in front. So the top right or left corner of the ballot paper, that's where we validate. The parliamentary ballot paper issuer will then instruct the voter how to fold the ballot after voting. The voter walks to the parliamentary voting screen, marks his or her choice, clean your hands again. After putting your thumb in the ink pad, mark your choice, clean your fingers before you touch the ballot. Now fold the ballot paper very well, come out of the parliamentary voting screen and drop it in the box. Then you exit the polling station. I said 5 officials. However, we're going to have a security officer at every polling station. When we talk of security, we are not talking of only the police. They are not enough for the 40,000 plus polling stations. Therefore, as part of the effort, the combined effort of the National Election Security Task Force, we have the police. You may see a policeman. You may see a prison service officer in uniform, immigration officer in uniform, a customs and preventive service officer in uniform, a fire service officer in uniform. All these people will be in uniform. Don't be told that the person is a mufti. No. We don't deploy security persons to polling stations. Those assigned will be in their uniform. They are there to help in terms of securing the process. Every polling station, political party agents, candidate agents, by candidate agents, I'm talking about the independent candidate as well. They also have agents. All the 12 will have their agents at every polling station. In the same way, they will also have agents for parliamentary, for candidates that are contesting in parliamentary elections. So this is the flow.
Wow.
Every polling station is well demarcated, well marked. When you go there, you see the demarcation tape, the arrangement, the order, the setup of a polling station. It is not a place for people to go and chat and converse and go and then, I don't know how to call it, but every polling station at this moment is a security area, as I may put it. If you don't have any business there, apart from voting, don't go there. It is not a stadium. So you vote, you exit the polling station, you can go home, and that's what we encourage, that people should not amass at the polling station. That somebody will say something and then it will create kind of confusion or untold situation. So the best thing to do is to vote go home at the time of counting at 5. You can come back to witness the counting. Please don't go beyond the demarcation lines. Stay outside the demarcation lines if you are coming to witness the counting. All candidates, political parties, they have agents. So if you are voting for a particular candidate, your candidate as an agent, you don't need to be there. They are well represented. They will have one candidate, one agent for presidential. Again, if they are also contesting the same party or the same party is contesting parliamentary seats in that same polling station or that constituency, they will have an agent for your party for presidential and another agent for parliamentary. So you have two. So then, what are you looking for at the polling station after you voted? Just go home and then come back and it's counted.
Okay, so you said there are 5.
Also giving accreditation to.
Go ahead.
Around.
Accreditation to who?
Observers and the media.
Observers and the media. So they can also observe the press at the polling station.
Access.
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. I was going to ask, you said there are 5 officials: name reference officer,
yes,
validation officer.
No, we have the presiding officer.
Okay, so presiding is number 1.
Presiding is the overall boss.
The name reference is number 2.
In charge of the polling station. Name reference list officer, verification officer,
ballot paper issuer,
presidential ballot paper issuer, and then presidential ballot paper.
So these 5 are supported by a security person. So for every polling station, you have at least 6 officials.
Yes.
6 officials.
Yes.
So if you multiply this 6 by the 40,648, we know the number of officials you have on the ground, in addition to the district officers and the regional officers. So that's quite a large undertaking. Just a few more rules. So if at 5 o'clock I am in a queue and I have not yet voted, what happens?
You'll be allowed to vote. So far as you are in the queue before 5, if it takes us to 7, it takes us to 8, 9, all voters in the queue will be allowed to vote, provided you are in the queue before 5 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, the security officer, the directive is to stand at the end of the queue, behind the last person in the queue. And he is not allowing any new entrant into the polling station or into the queue. So all those in the queue, if it's 5 o'clock, they will be set until the last person votes.
There's a message from a listener. It says, "Good morning, Bernard. Please ask Mr. Tetteh if party agents are to collect voter ID cards for verification. They did that the last time and I was not happy with that. So please clarify this." This is from Susie.
No. That's not the rule. Why should you collect voter's ID card when the person is coming to vote or after he has voted? Why do you do that? You have your register. The person comes. They mention the column and then they mention the page. You have your register. Open to it. You are sitting close to the officials. So you take. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And in any case, we use a biometric voters register. If the person's name is not in the register, there's no way that you can vote. On this note, let me take this opportunity to educate the public that if you turn up at the polling station, like I said, if your name is not found in the name reference list, your name will not be in the main register. If you insist that that's the polling station that you registered, if your name is not in the name reference list and therefore not in the register, possibly your name could be found in the multiple list or the exception list. What it means is that you've done a multiple registration. And in the multiple list, all the series of registrations that you've done has been recorded against you. In addition, you have your pictures. If you've done 2, 3, let's say you did first registration in 2020, second registration in 2023, and third registration in 2024. all the registration that you did will be in that multiple register, multiple list. And you see your pictures, the shirt, the dress that you were wearing at each stage, date, where you're registered, and your details will be in the multiple list. So you'll not be allowed. Similarly, voters who were challenged during the registration over the years from 2020 to date, and their cases were sent before the District Registration Review Committee, they turn up and the committee upheld their disqualification that they are not Ghanaians or they are not qualified to be a registered voters. They will find their name in the what you call the exception list. In addition, in the exception list, we have voters who are dead, the disease, where then we receive reports with evidence, documentary evidence that indeed someone is passed. We send those documentations to the death and birth registry for authentication, and then we place the dead, the diseased person, in the exception list. So those are two other lists that you may, I'm using my words carefully, may. So the exception and multiple lists may not be found at every polling station. But where they are, those are the content. And those people will classify them as invalid voters. They cannot vote in the elections.
Wonderful. Still on the process, and I really thank you for taking time to thoroughly explain this. When the counting is happening, can people record it with their phones? And again, describe how the demarcations will be, because I suspect this is in an open space, because most polling centers are outside, right? So what are the protocols for counting?
Every polling station is outside, so in the opening.
Yeah, take us through the protocol. Yes, take us through the protocols for counting. What has to happen before counting? What can be done? What cannot be done?
Well, at the end of the voting, the counting is done there and then. We don't take it anywhere. So the presiding officer being in charge will break the seals of the ballot boxes. The presidential ballots. Sometimes they also decide to do the parliamentary first before doing the presidential, because the presidential ballot counting sometimes, after people knowing the results, comes with kind of a jubilation and therefore disturb the other counted. So whichever way they want to start first, usually we advise them that they should do the presidential first. Indeed, the presiding officer decided to go that way, that's fine. So all the content, yes, I must say that when we start a poll, after the presiding officer, the officials has put the EC seals on the ballot boxes, political party agents with seals are also permitted to put their seals on the ballot boxes before the start of poll. At the close of poll, these seals will be broken by the presiding officer. The content fall on the table. And the first, what we train them to do is to do what we call reconciliation. By reconciliation, they have to make sure that they count, they will place the ballot papers face down, checking for validating stamp at the back for every ballot paper. As they count them first, face down, not for candidate. I'm saying not for candidate. The ballot papers will be placed face down to count the number of ballot papers that they found that are in the box, that were taken out of the box. Then this figure will be matched against the count on the BVD and then the number of ticks in the register, satisfying themselves that the figures are tallying. Then they take the ballot papers face up. Now they're going to sort by what you call the candidate. They sort in terms of candidates, and if indeed there are ballot papers in there that should be rejected, they reject it. they rejected those ballot papers based on the 5 criteria for rejecting a ballot paper. I'll come to that. So sorting by candidate, they have to count the ballot papers, showing the ballot papers how it has been thumbprinted to the public. So 1, 2, 3, each candidate ballot will be counted. And preferably, we train them that they should start with the least pile of a candidate's pile of ballots. So that you start with the least and you end with the highest. Else, you start with the highest jubilations that nobody will listen to anything that you're doing. So that's what you do. If presidential, you start with presidential in that way, and then they finish with that, record the figures, then they go in for parliamentary to do that. Unlike other countries where there are laws in their statutes or the legal framework or the electoral laws states that where a stray ballot is found in another box, it should be rejected. In Ghana, a stray ballot found in another box is valid. It must be added to the candidate where that ballot belongs. Let me repeat and give a classical example. For example, a voter, in the course of dropping the ballot paper in the presidential ballot box, drops it in the parliamentary. So during the sorting or the counting, we found presidential ballot paper in the parliamentary or vice versa. It's classified as a stray ballot. However, in Ghana, it is a valid ballot that should be brought back to where it belongs and added up. In terms of the
before you go there, which means that the presidential and parliamentary must be sorted at the same time before counting begins, so that if you see a stray ballot, you are reallocated.
Looking at the numbers and the fact that you should give it a full attention in the counting, you need to concentrate, both the officials and then the agents, and then the voting public that comes later to come and witness it. So we don't do the two simultaneously.
I was asking because if I open presidential and then we sort and then we count,
yes,
and we count, everybody knows the number, then we open parliamentary and sort, and then we found one presidential in the parliamentary, it means that the numbers for the presidential we originally counted, we have to change it, then add that extra.
Yes,
and this is in the full view of the public.
You add the 1. If it's 2, you add the 2. It will not create any problem.
Good. Let's go into the 5. Okay. Go ahead.
Yes. When we finish counting and we are recording the figures, not immediately that you put your figures in the pin sheet. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes. You have to finish everything before you record the figure, so there's no problem.
Exactly.
Good.
So we've gotten the number for the various candidates. We put them down. Observers, media, everybody. We've recorded the figures. Let's say in the manual, because in the manual they also have samples of the pin sheet. They've recorded those things. And then they finished the parliamentary. They recorded the figures as well. Now you transpose them into what we call the pin sheets.
Good.
So in doing that, when there are stray ballots, you need to add them up to the figure. And when you see a stray ballot, you have to announce it that yes, we found one parliamentary or one presidential here and there, and that's it.
Good. Now let's talk about the 5 criteria. The 5 criteria for rejecting a ballot.
Yes, for rejecting a ballot. The first criteria for rejecting a ballot where a voter has voted in between 2 candidates. So let's say the voter has placed his or her finger in between the demarcation line between maybe candidate 2 and candidate 3 or candidate Avle. So such a ballot paper, the choice of the voter cannot be ascertained, whether he's voting for 2 or 3 or that. It will be rejected. Some voters, when they are given the ballot paper, they decide to vote for more than one person or one candidate. If you print more than one, it will be rejected. When people are given a ballot paper and decide that, I don't like anybody on the ballot paper, and therefore it's total blank ballot. You don't see any thumbprint at all. Blank ballot paper will be rejected as well. So that's the third criteria. The fourth criteria are those who take the ballot paper and they write their name. They signed their name. They use a pen to do a mark on the ballot paper where they are supposed to thumbprint. Or they write, of late we've seen people writing their phone numbers, Momo number. They write Momo and then write their number at where they are supposed to thumbprint. Such ballot paper will be rejected. The fifth criteria for rejecting a ballot paper is a ballot paper without a validating stamp at the back. So those are the 5 main criteria for rejecting a ballot paper.
Wow, this is really.
We've also seen out of our research over the years, we've seen that there's another trend apart from the 5. Some group of people also go to the polling station with a blade in their pocket. We don't know whether blade or razor or whatever. And they decide to cut the photographs of the candidates. When you do that, the ballot paper will be rejected. When you do that, the ballot paper will be rejected.
Wow.
So that is what we're saying. And those are the 5 main criteria.
All right, it's 7:04, so ballot papers should have arrived and voting should be beginning by now. If for any reason a polling station hasn't received their ballot papers by this time, will you give them extra time after 5 p.m. since 10 hours is what the voting time is supposed to be? Is there any formula like that?
If the polling station delays, the condition under which we could increase or extend the time beyond is where something happened, a force majeure, and even with that, the presiding officer must communicate the reasons for the delay or to the returning officer for the commission to know for such a place the voting could be extended. But where it's delayed for some few minutes, some few hours, 1 hour, provided they turn up and all voters vote in that polling station, and at 5 there is no queue, they have to end. They have to close the polling station and go ahead and count.
Beautiful. So before you go, we have understood everything about the polling center. Let's just explain the final thing in relation to collation. So we finished counting, we filled the pink sheets, results have been announced, everybody is happy. When we get to the collation center for the constituency, do all the ballot boxes have to get there before the collation starts? Is it just the pink sheets they need? What must happen at the collation center?
Okay. Before we go to the collation process, I left something out that I need to inform public. Per the law, the CI 127, during the counting and after counting, if a polling agent or a party agent is not satisfied with the counting, they have the right to request, and I'm saying that I'm repeating the word, request for a recount. they can request for a recount. If a recount is done and the presiding officers calling when a request for a recount is made, they don't have any option than to do that. However, if a second recount is requested by an agent, the presiding officer at this point has the prerogative to decide to do it or not. Nonetheless, the second recount must be done at the collation center. For example, let me give an example. The first count gave us, when you total everything, let's say 250. You made a request for a recount. We've done the second, the recount, and we've established at the same figure, 250. Candidates getting their figures, there is no change. For requesting for a third count, which happens to be the second recount, the presiding officer can decide that, no, I'm not doing that, because it's just a waste of time. So in such a situation, the second recount request will be done at the constituency collation center. And this time, not by the presiding officer, but by the returning officer. So that is the procedure. Now, going to the collation center, the key thing required at the collation center is the pin sheet, what we call statement of poll and declaration of result sheet, famously called the pin sheet. That is what is required. The ballot boxes, sealed ballot boxes, and I might say that after everything is done, we put everything except the BVD and the result sheet. And talking about the result sheet, at the end of the counting and the recording of the figures on the pin sheet, copies are given to the candidate and party agents present, and a copy pasted at the polling station. We advise the public that when a copy of the results is pasted at the polling station, it is meant for their records, for the media to take photographs, observers to take photographs, and ordinary voter, you can go and use your phone to take a photograph. People should not go and rip off the pasted or the result sheet that has been posted at the polling stations. We beg them, they shouldn't do that. It is a notice to the voting public at the polling station. So, presiding officer together with the security will take physically, the presiding officer will take the physical copy of the pin sheet. I must say that the pin sheet, the result sheet, should not be in the ballot box after completing the process. They seal the ink, ballot papers, the register, and other things in there. But what will be outside the ballot box is the result sheet and the DVD. It will be carried to the collation center, constituency collation center, with the escort of the security. The key item required at the collation center is the pin sheet, not the boxes. Provided that polling station box as a request for a recount, then it will be brought to the fore of the collation process for a recount to be done. What is required at the constituency collation center specifically is the result sheet for collation. At the constituency collation center, each presiding officer presents his or her results physically there is no electronic transmission. Physical copy of the pin sheets, and which happens to be the original, to the returning officers. They take it, they announce the polling station that has turned up or showed up or has brought their results, and then record the figures manually. Simultaneously, a collation officer, constituency collation officer, has projected the spreadsheet where the figures will be recorded. So polling station 1 comes, they must mention the name of the polling station, the code of the polling station, and then the figures obtained, the valid votes obtained by each of the candidates. The same way there are...
So am I to understand by this that every collation center will have a computer and a projector so that the spreadsheet will be projected onto some screen? Is that what I'm to understand by what you're saying?
Exactly.
So it's not blackboard. It's not blackboard and chalk.
Manual collation sheet, and then the figures also be projected.
Okay, so there's a manual collation sheet, and then the figures projected for everybody to see, which means that every collation center must have electricity connection.
Exactly.
All right. You gave me some interesting numbers at the beginning. This is not diversionary. So, what is the smallest number of polling stations in a constituency, and what's the largest? Do you have those figures? Because you said the smallest.
I don't.
You don't have that. Because I suspect that the larger constituency will have more polling stations, and the smaller will have fewer polling stations.
Yes, sometimes yes, yes. So you may look at places like Domikwabinya, comes to mind. You also look at places like Amasaman. I think Ashiaman too is huge. I think
Adenta is big.
West,
Kwabre East, Medina,
yes,
they're all big.
I'm not sure, but I've not taken my time to.
Okay.
Yes, I've done those kind of analysis, but I've not taken my time to look at them.
All right.
But as you know, in terms of ranking, Domikwabinya
is the largest.
Is the highest. The largest.
I actually have your map in front of me here. So Domikwabinya has the highest, 182,000. So in terms of timing, we start voting at 7, we finish at 5. Typically, counting at a polling station should end by when?
Well, some polling stations should finish counting, like I said, in a polling station where you have 22 voters, on the average, within 1 hour, 1.5 hours to 2 hours, they should be done.
So definitely by 7 p.m., polling station results should be known.
By 7 p.m., 6:37
6:37.
Majority of the polling stations are finished counting, and they are moving their results to the collation centers.
What is the average time collation will begin?
Hello?
What is the average time that you expect collation to start in the collation centers?
Bernard, that's interesting, and it depends. Because what happens is that the moment the results start coming, they don't wait. So, assuming a polling station could finish by 7, straight away finishing 7 and be able to physically present those at the collation center, the returning officers are expected to start the collation process, because we don't wait for all of them to come before you start collation. As they come in, you collate. As they come in, you collate. Whichever one comes, you start adding the figures up.
So you are not going to put a time on it yet, but from
not at all.
I'm asking because, in some elections, the commission will say, well, because of what we've put in place, things are faster. For example, in this election, you said your BVDs are quicker, so between 2 to 5 seconds, the verification happens. So you don't expect somebody to spend more than 3 minutes in a queue. So I was hoping you could also tell us that based on processes you've put in place, the collation shouldn't go beyond, say, midnight or whatever. But you are not able to do that.
Well, No, because what happens is that the constituencies with smaller numbers, you can't have a constituency with a smaller number, a constituency like Pinduri in the Upper East region. You can't have a constituency like Afram Plains South or North. Yes, the numbers will be smaller, but in terms of the movement, that's the issue. Okay, for the presiding, and some of them they have to cross the lake. Finishing, you have to cross the lake. Biakuye, I was there during the referendum. We have to wait for people to, in midnight, to cross the lake with their results and come. So it takes time in some places. So you can have a place that, like Domikwa, the largest in Ghana, total population, is compact, and therefore moving to the coalition center is very easy, very, very easy. And however, it's not the same especially in other places. So you cannot put a specific time around it, Bernard.
Wow, it's been a long interview, but I think it's been very important for you to have gone through all this. Thank you. I hope we can speak again before the process ends at 5, because hopefully there may be a few T's to cross and I's to dot. But I thank you for spending almost an hour with me on this interview. Fred Tetteh, Director of Research. Thank you. My pleasure.
Right, thank you.
Fred Tetteh is Director of Research at the Electoral Commission. And Godfred, we've been talking to him, I think, how at 7:20. Yeah, I started at 6:20 or 6:30. So almost an hour. Let me just highlight some of the things. Let me summarize.
Okay.
18.7 million voters, 40,648 polling stations. The smallest polling station is 22, largest is 700. Average polling station 375 to 380 people per voter. 10 hours of voting between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m.